Hey, folks, welcome to Kaiser's Castle. Today I have an awesome guest for you. I've got several other awesome guests lined up for the rest of this week, but this gentleman I have known, I believe, since 2007 ish, maybe a little earlier. I can't remember when I got on Facebook, but he is a very great guy in a lot of ways, very experienced in a lot of things, but a specialist in removing contaminants that most people never talk about. And we're going to discuss those contaminants today. And with that, I would like to introduce you to Jim. He is well, you can introduce yourself and tell them what kind of work you do if you want to, and
All right.
also introduce the subject.
All right. Well, you see, I started off my life doing 23 years as an archaeologist, and that drug me around into bombs.
Yep.
And here's what's going on. I mean, until 1973, it was common practice for the U.S. Navy to drop ordnance directly off the ship into what becomes dredge material.
Right.
Now, the biggest cleanup that we've ever had for unexploded ordnance was in Florida on a nice little private beach, and yeah, they cleaned all that up, and it cost a few $1 million. And Portland, Oregon, oh yeah, same thing. Vancouver, Washington. It's all dredge material going into these construction sites that have, well, artillery rounds. You got firing ranges. One of my biggest projects was Cape Cod. Cape
Right.
Cod has one aquifer. That's also the central firing point for Joint Base Cape Cod.
Wow.
You got lead azide, you got TNT, you got RDX, you got a lot of shit. And
Right.
I'm just saying, this stuff, yeah, it doesn't really equate for a lot of people because they don't really understand what's going on with it. I mean, it's like an anomalous thing, and it's everywhere.
Everywhere, including in the U.S., which
I don't
is
really. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's practice stuff, but hell, Navy fights like they train.
yep. And
They
the one thing I can add is like Fort McClellan, Alabama, where I went through basic training in AIT as military policeman. Um, that entire site is contaminated not just with ordnance, but also it's still the only live nerve agent training center, and it was the home
huh?
of Chemical Corps. So you had chemicals in the ground, and some of these things like lead azide, whatever it was you just said, I can't remember because I just mind dumped it. Getting old sucks, brother. Uh, and you
Yeah.
deal with it all the time, whereas I'm no longer dealing with anything like that and
All
haven't
right.
for quite
I mean,
some time.
it's like I just got off of a job and I'm going to be heading back to DC. The American University was where Lewisite got developed. You're talking
Right.
about what they call Hades Pit, which was the dumping hole where they just threw away a bunch of stuff. And yeah, I've been working on these sites where you're talking about multi-million-dollar mansions. It's the richest neighborhood in Washington D.C. where Eric Holder has a mansion. I'm working next to the South Korean ambassador's house, the Yemenese ambassador's house. the ambassador from Spain, and this stuff is, I wouldn't eat tomatoes from there. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And yeah, you're talking rich people. It's not it's not necessarily something that's only affecting poor people, which most folks would think it would be. But no, we're talking this stuff is in a lot of places, and the government is not rushing around to clean this stuff up.
Right. And they also want to
Uh,
deny in some cases that any problem exists. So then you have a long time just to get authorized to try to clean that contamination up. And it takes a
exactly,
specialized kind of person to do that because, look, like you said earlier,
exactly.
when they dredge that material up with artillery rounds that have not gone off, that's a UXO, an unexploded ordnance problem. And it's in the foundations of flipping buildings that people occupy every day. It is a real thing, folks, and it travel. What was it I told you about a brother of mine? We'll keep his name and his company out of it. He told me back in the day, and this is in 2009 or 2008. I'm sorry, I just lied to you. He told me that there's 100 years worth of work just to try to decon everything.
I saw 33 105 millimeter rounds full of, well, nerve agent
Right?
right up against a house.
Wow. Is that from the ground shifting and it coming up from the freeze thaw cycle, or
No,
just
no, they,
placed
they were
there?
they were stacked. They were stacked there because they got dug up and then they poured the foundation and they built them right. They put them right up against the house and backfilled them.
Gee, many Christmas. So that was a way for them to take up space, so the ground wouldn't. I got
No,
what
they
you're
weren't taking
saying.
up space. I mean, they were just putting them there to bury them and saying everything's okay.
Oh, okay. So it was outright contractor issue on building that vehicle or
Exactly,
house.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah. That happened in the 30s,
Wow.
but um, yeah, this stuff is all over the place, man.
Oh, I know. I mean, I don't disbelieve just because of the amount of stuff we used to do when cities were smaller. I mean, shoot, I've talked about it on my show, and you know about it. Um,
Mhm.
the amount of places we used to actually train, and it would be considered like farm area or something right outside the city, but the city grew, and so all that lead's not going anywhere. It's seeping into the groundwater. They talk about. I remember when I was a kid, the big thing was don't eat paint chips off of houses because of lead paint. But nobody talked about what the U.S. government actually has done by allowing this ordinance, including just lead bullets, folks, the old lead bullets from the Civil War, even. That's seeping into your groundwater. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's some poisonous shit.
Well, I mean, lead is lead, but um, when you're talking actual chemical weapons, yeah,
That's a bigger
I get a
issue,
little bit
right?
nervous.
Indeed.
And you know, one of the one of the big things that we look at is actually degradation on chemicals. And so, from Lewis site, one of the main degradation chemicals is actually arsenic.
Right.
And arsenic being heavy metal, that goes into, well, your gardens, your everything. But no, we're talking about an entire neighborhood in Washington, D.C., that's downstream from American University that's completely fucked.
I know what you mean. There was a buddy of mine, Bob Jarvis, who told a story. and I tend to believe him. We called him Uncle Bob at the time. Really great guy.
Oh,
He went.
Grandpa.
Oh, okay. He uh, he went barefoot on a stump at the Somme, and he had to go to the doctors after he did it. It was a dewy morning. He told me everything that happened, him and his girl, whatever, and he wanted to get a picture on a stump that was old, like from World War I, and he was still barefoot. It was beautiful spring morning. I think I'm getting his story right, and if not, hopefully I'll have Bob on so he can elucidate it. But he had pictures. He got blistered on the bottom of his feet because they had inundated that area with so much blister agent that it got into the soil, and I don't know what kind of strength and longevity it has, but somehow seeped up through the stump. And I guess they had to remove that stump, the French people did.
Huh. Well, it's possible.
Yeah, that's his
I mean,
story.
I yeah, that's possible. Uh, you know, this stuff has a longevity, and even with the breakdown, it's not just a chemical agent. With a breakdown, it goes down to its basic level. Its basic level is, well, with lucite, it's arsenic.
Right. That's what the.
And
Yep.
yeah, it goes from a blister agent to arsenic. And I mean, arsenic's pretty bad stuff. Um,
Yep.
but no, the U.S. government has held on to this stuff like like the plague. I mean, they don't want to discuss this. They don't want to say, "Oh, we screwed everything up." No, I mean, this is where you should actually be environmentally concerned. This is where you should actually be considered a hippie.
I agree.
Um, no, I mean, yeah, I've been dealing with this stuff for too many years, and it's just one thing after another, after another, after another. Of seriously, the U.S. government has contaminated our water supply.
Yep. And look, how many parts per million, and I'm being very honest because I don't know, of arsenic is acceptable, quote unquote, in
Right,
our
right,
our our water system because they do measure that, and that's a cover up from the city, the state, the county, and the federal government, and
right.
so it filters down, and everybody it's ignore the problem and it'll go away. No, weapons do not go away. If you have something that's loaded with C4, all it takes is some heat and some shock. So let's just say you have an artillery round right next to your house by a contractor company that's shady, your house catches fire, and as it's burning, it gets really hot because you can throw C4 on a campfire, ain't nothing going to happen. But let's say the chimney falls down on it and gives it that shock, you no longer have a fire, you have an explosion.
Well, yeah. Or let's put a shovel on a PD fuse.
Yep.
Sorry to get technical.
No, I got you.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Put put a point detonating fuse and a shovel. Yeah. That could screw things up. I I don't really think that most Americans understand that ordnance has been scattered nearly as far as it has.
Oh, I
We're talking
agree.
Pole Mountain, Wyoming.
Oh, I believe you. And
We're
that's,
talking,
yep. Yeah, like I was trying to say, even RDX is a base component of C4, and that is very unstable by
oh,
itself.
right, 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 right.
And so you get some heat. What?
Yeah, RDX is,
Yep. Go on.
well, it's static compatible. I mean, it holds directly to any container or anything if they're static. It's you get a negative ion charge and it'll it'll stick to anything. So you end up with that hit to a water table. Holy hell. I mean, people are not looking at this stuff and realizing that this stuff is potentially dangerous.
Well, I remember one place when went to Hawaii on a rim pack. We went to a place and they were like, "Watch out when you're coming off." This one beach area was a bombing range. Okay, and what ended up happening was they'd been dropping white phosphorus on it, and some of the white phosphorus was
Mm-hmm.
unexploded.
Yeah.
And they were like, watch out for like a greenish white. They look like little floating rocks. I can't really describe them any better than that. And it was also on the beach. And
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
yeah, and you know where I'm talking about too, probably. And
Probably.
and
Possibly.
but the point is that stuff, as soon as it's even in water, it should be burning, but it never got actuated to burn or whatever it is. But the exposure to air, so if you got it on your
Well,
skin,
yeah.
it's going.
But I mean, you know, we really need to be concerned about the environment. I mean, whales,
Indeed.
salmon. Um, I mean, it's like this is the world we live in, and why the hell is it that if I talk about the environment, that I get ridiculed as being a friggin' hippie?
You're not a hippie. You're somebody who understands. See, that's the whole thing. You understand a contaminant because you've dealt with it. And we don't deal with ordnance, and I think it is done by design in the U.S. We don't deal with ordnance as a contaminant. We just think, oh, it's Grandpa Jones's old musket ball, the lead. We don't think.
Yeah, but it's not an old musket ball.
Right. No, I get that. But I'm saying the
Yeah.
government on all levels hides that from the people to they just don't realize that there is so much out there, and that's why this was a very prescient. This is a primer, folks, because he's gonna be back on, and he can still break stuff down as long as he wants today. But this show is meant to introduce you to a guy that's about to break down a true threat to our nation and to the people of our nation. And to, we are going to, I think we will peel back the layers of the onion. And I can't think of a better guest to do it with because this gentleman, if you knew his bona fides like I do, has the ability to, I guess you're kind of whistleblowing on something that should have been whistleblown a long time ago.
I'm a pacifist, man. I mean, you know me, I'm a pacifist. I will pull a trigger on somebody if I need to, but the fact is, no, this, this, this shouldn't be a problem. This should be funded. This needs to get taken care of, and it's all over the country,
Indeed.
and it's so so horribly funded, and I don't understand it. I mean, yeah, it's worked for me, but yeah, we need to clean this stuff up.
Oh, it's super important, man. And you're not a hippie. You're just environmentally. Look, and I know you're not a conservative. I know you'd never say you were, and you're not. You're a good man. You're a good man, is what you are. And that's how we should be judging men. And they're either good or bad, you know?
Well, I am a conservative, but
Well, I meant
I'm a
you're
conservative
more
hippie, I guess.
you're like me. I think you're a classical Jeffersonian liberal, and yeah, that'll come to a
I don't know
shock
what
to
that means.
people. Well, it means look, the first guy who was the biggest pacifist and anti-war president got the Marines to go to. That's why it's in from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, because our people were being taken by the Barbary pirates, and they sent in the Marines to Tripoli, Libya, and that's a fact. But yet, that was the biggest pacifist president we ever had was Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Jefferson was the first person to put us into a foreign war, and it was to
It'll be
free Americans.
it'll be interesting to see how many people actually even entertain this volume. Uh, yeah, but I mean, if they're interested, I'll expand. I'll I'll share more information. But I mean, the real concern here for me is the fact that there is unexploded ordnance all over the country.
Yep.
Every training area, every everything, and it's affecting water quality. It's affecting aquifers.
Yep.
Cape Cod. Cape Cod is fully contaminated with RDX.
And it's a major fishing area, so the wildlife are getting
Right.
infected with it.
Well, the Cape Cod, it's only one aquifer, and the center of it is actually the central firing point for the the training area.
Right.
That it's the everything is going right into the aquifer right there in the center. Firing point is the center of the aquifer. Oh, holy hell.
Yep. Well, I will tell you, brother, I am so happy that you've come on the show. I've known you a long time. Um,
Absolutely.
we've had some great offline conversations, and that's another key point to the show besides building better men. Look, guys, you can do whatever you want. You can make a difference. You can actually be a lefty or a righty. And the basic term conservative means you're trying to conserve something. What's more important to conserve than the flipping water? And that's
I mean,
why,
absolutely. I mean, yeah. I mean, you want to try and make sure that, hey, do you want your grandkids to grow up in shit? No. You want
right.
your grandkids to be able to live a better life.
I think that's the
And
whole point of the reason why we have kids, brother, right?
well, I would hope so. I mean, but I just don't understand this whole bitter conservatism. The bitter conservatism is something that I don't really like.
I agree with you. My point is conservatism is conserving something, conserving
Mm, yeah,
uh, your progeny. Okay, you're preserving something for the people that you've created
mm,
that will
yeah,
carry on your
I'm
line.
down. I'm down with that, but it just feels like too many times it's just turned into I don't know how to put it exactly, but hateful, spiteful.
I don't know if I think that's I think that's on the left and on the right combined, but I really don't want to get into politics on this.
Oh, okay.
I see one thing as a real thing. You have two heads of the same snake body feeding that same snake body, and it's the progressive, neo progressives is what I call them, and the neocons, the neoconservatives, quote unquote conservatives. What have they conserved? Absolutely nothing. And they feed that same snake body. And
I'd agree with that.
yeah, and so you have the people like you and I who are in the middle. And you know, I may swing a little more right than you. You may swing a little more right than me. Who knows on certain issues, and that's okay.
Right. Yeah.
But gentlemen can disagree. You and I have had conversations where we disagree wholeheartedly on something. But the point is to find commonality of a subject that is very important to everybody. And if we can't do that on this issue, I don't know what we can find commonality on. And that's why it was so vital. And I want you to so totally be a common person that comes on here on my channel
Well, I mean,
to ring
you
the alarm
know,
bell.
you know, it comes to me that who could absolutely be against having bombs against your house?
Right. That's pretty simple, isn't it? It's basic.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, um, is that left? Is that right? No, that just friggin' makes sense.
It's humanity. And I mean, we make a big deal of funding the UN on their international demining, and we do fund them, but it's a pittance of what we give our own nation state to demine, i.e., DUXO, our own flippin' country. Our kid could be out digging a hole playing army or something and activate something that's been down there for 50 years, 100 years. That's a fact. They find cannonballs. I remember an EOD tech one time. Uh, Me and him were chewing the fat. I'm not getting into specifics, but they had done a whole big thing on how they were going to render safe a cannonball. And the concurrence was he was going to go in, it was a Navy guy, he was going to go in the water, slow drill the thing until all the powder was wet. And that's what he did. That's how he rendered that item safe. And that item sat at Camp Pendleton's um,
Well,
little area.
when you got a brass, well, I won't go into the technical
Right.
details.
We're not going to do that. But I'm just saying that was a way that he improvised, adapted, overcame, and got it done. And the point is, that was a real threat, and it was right next to a house at Camp Pendleton, California. That's a fact.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah,
found by
yeah,
somebody's kid.
yeah. And this is a this is a concern. It should be a concern for a lot of people, and no, I want to make sure that people understand that there could be explosive concerns in otherwise nice little neighborhoods. I mean, I said Spring Valley, Washington D.C. Yeah, you're sitting on a bunch of bombs.
That's true. I
Cool.
mean, you're telling the truth. And that's the whole big thing. So, is there anything that I always let people, if they want to push a good site that they can think of, and if you can't think of it now, have it ready for the next show for people to look
Don't
at the
ever,
concerns.
don't ever buy a house on a road called Bombing Range Road.
Right. That. That's a major indicator there, brah. Oh, that's so hilarious. But you hit the nail on the head. They normally name roads after something that's very correct.
I'm just saying what I say. So, shit. I'm probably also not really the most politically correct person you've ever had on your channel. I probably swear too much.
No, oh no, bruh. You are exactly the kind of people I have on my channel. None of us are politically correct. You can say fuck, cunt, shit, piss, whatever on my channel. Um, the only thing, like I said, my channel is devoted to two things: making better men and letting them become who they want to be and follow their dreams and their goals. And as an archaeologist, you know how to dig up fine bones and even use brushes to get to them. And that's a lot of the skill set that somebody in
The
EOD
ring on my
needs.
finger came off a grenade.
There you go. And it's it's so hilarious that um, young men find themselves disjointed and thinking they don't have a career if they're not out of college and doing this and doing that. And you went from being a college graduate to being a tech, and from an archaeologist
Yeah.
to being a tech because there was a greater purpose to it. You found something that had useful purpose, and I really do hate not hate. I don't like that you use the term hippie for yourself. You're a concerned citizen who's trying to conserve the future of our American people by rendering, or not rendering safe, but by basically going up and clearing contaminants. We need to refer to all this material as contaminants because they are actual contaminants. They contaminate the fauna, the
Well,
flora, the animals.
I'm not authorized to do RSPs. Um, but yeah, I mean,
Right,
I just want to tell people it, and a real hard thing is for me to not go into saying render safe procedures, and I just say
right,
RSP.
right,
Yeah, it's difficult for me to not go into lingo.
right. No, you're fine, man. Trust me. Most people on my channel probably know what you're talking about, and I understand that's not what you wanted or you can do, but you're finding it. You're using all the geolocators, the stuff that, the kind of things that you travel across the ground
Yeah,
in a grid square to find the stuff. We don't need to get into specifics on
yeah,
anything.
we're actually dealing with antiquated technology. Um,
Right.
it's not. I yeah,
Even
it,
on an artillery range, you're going to have overshoots and undershoots. So let's say the
absolutely.
impact area
Yeah.
is right here. That impact area can be short or longer. So you have to use certain technologies to find out where the unders and the overs are because you know where the impact area is supposed to be. But the thing
Well,
about ordnance
yeah.
is it can be short loaded or heavy loaded, and all of a sudden it throws everything into more of an oblong pattern instead of that circular pattern that you get when you're given an old map, right? And run for this for a
Well,
couple seconds because I got to bounce for 1 second, and you just run with this, and you got the mic.
well, one thing I think is funny is reserve ranges with mortars. So suppose you launch something and didn't actually remove the safety. Yeah. But the the real issue is this stuff's everywhere. Hello, hello.
Can
Uh-huh.
you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's why I said run with it for a couple seconds. I had to walk away. My people on my page understand this because I have dogs. I have to do things for them. So I saw that as I ran back, the audio had went away from you. Did you run out of something to say?
Well, I kind of ran out of something to say. I think well, I don't know.
Okay, no worries, man. The point is, I next time I have you on, you'll be you have stuff you want to say, but you really have to monitor it because I can't edit things. So I definitely
Oh, so I can't drop the F bomb anymore.
no. You can say fuck, shit, cunt, everything. This is my channel. YouTube wants to ban it, they can ban it. I don't care. I still have the
Oh, okay.
recordings. Yeah, I have the recordings. I can put it up on BitChute. A matter of fact, I will put this one up on BitChute because
Okay.
you are my brother. You can say what, and everybody who comes on here who's a brother of mine can say what the fuck ever they want. I say it too, bruh. Uh, no, when I walked over, my desktop audio was not moving, and I thought you ran out of something to say, and I ran to the back door, let the dogs out.
Well, I really don't even know what to say. I mean, it's like you got bombs all over the country, and yeah.
It's a serious issue. And also, I'd love for you to touch on some archaeology digs that, if you, the ones that you can talk about, definitely would love to have you do that. And I'm telling you, uh, you have to understand something. On YouTube views, you have to look at something. Those views do not get done when it's shared somewhere and it goes into different places. Uh, and I look at my views, and while YouTube may be suppressing it from BitChute, from Mines, from everywhere I share stuff, I have some good views. And I love my small little group of people, 207, I believe, on the last count from YouTube, that take a seat on my big orange couch and they drink a cup of coffee, a cup of tea. Maybe they'll have a soda or an adult libation. And in Kaiser's Castle, it's a small community. And when this comes up live, I'll let you know. I'll make sure you can be in the chat. Anybody who wants to talk to you can talk to you, and you can just hang out in the chat, watch the conversation. I usually turn it off because I already know what we talked about, so I never
Uh,
listen to it. But I look at the chat because sometimes the chat's more entertaining. But this time is not going to be one of those times. I actually will be listening to it as I'm in the chat. But some people don't like to hear their own voice, and I'm one of them. But with you, brother, every time we've had an epic conversation, it's been every time we talk is an epic conversation. And so this is just a glimpse, like all the other ones, of people I conversate with that you should know because they're intellectuals. They're some of them are soldiers, sailors, marines, whatever, army guys, foreigners that I have. There's all kinds of people that come on, but we all have one thing in common. We agree that to be a to conserve something for the future and for our progeny is the most important thing, and to make better men, that does help conserve our societies. And then the final thing, in my opinion, and it's the thing that is most important to me personally, is that my son has a record of people who've known me, and they can talk shit about me too. You can too. You know that. You can do it on my channel. So whatever you want to ever talk about, brother, you can jump into.
I really don't have much room to talk shit about you, but okay.
No, I'm just, I'm being facetious in a lot of ways, but that's what I'm saying. There's no hold bars. I don't know how to edit. I wouldn't edit anybody.
Yeah. I mean, it's whatever. I mean, if you got 270 people who want to hear me prattle on about that shit, all right, cool.
Well, hey, it raises awareness, and that 207 might all of a sudden become more. They may not be subscribers and stuff, but all of a sudden they're sharing this thing out there, and they're like, we can't wait till he comes on again. And I've seen it as I brought on
Well,
different people. I've seen it grow.
you know, it it really astonishes me how few people realize it's like, oh, holy shit, this neighborhood right below American University is full of chemical weapons.
Oh yeah, not just
Fucking
that.
weird.
Not just that, but think about Portland, Oregon, all the
Oh
places you
yeah,
were talking about, they're all
yeah,
affected.
yeah.
And Camp Pendleton, I'll never forget. The guy we were talking about before the show, his biggest contract was at the firing ranges at Pendleton,
Look, Shove.
deconning
I mean,
those.
Moab, Utah.
Right?
Moab. Well, a lot of the houses that are built there, their foundations are poured out of concrete that's made from uranium tailings.
Right. Well,
I mean,
even
that's not healthy.
even another place in Utah, you know where if you want to say the name of the town, you can. I'm not going to. But one of our largest storehouses of chemical weapons is right there, and they find
Oh,
spills in
Deseret.
it. They find
Deseret.
spills.
Fucking right. Deseret. Hell yeah.
Yeah, they find spills in there from barrels.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't know that there's buildings that go down 7 stories below. Anyway,
No, you're talking exactly correct because of the way different things are shipped, and that's another thing we can get into, me and you. And there's another guy on here that we'll probably get into it with, but the DUMBs, those are real things, deep underground bases, and also the connecting arteries to them, which are rail lines. But that's you may or
yeah,
may not know about
don't
them.
like to
Yeah,
I don't like to get involved with
yeah,
those conversations because that could be, yeah, career limiting for me.
right. So, but I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
but
uh, I'll get into it with other
yeah,
people, but yeah, I can say for myself, I know deep underground bases exist, and it's been public. I mean, that's why you see fallout shelter signs on old buildings, because they had basements and basements and basements. And that's when we actually took civil defense. This is another thing you and I both agree on, and I love you for it. We agree that civil defense has been corrupted by FEMA because we don't really have a civil defense anymore.
well, one thing that all this changed, all this happened. One thing that fomented from this was churches got placed in places, schools got placed in places. It changed the actual dynamic of the U.S.
Oh, you're right. Even government buildings. Um, I'll never forget. This is back in the '90s, I think, under
Well, yeah,
Clinton, where they started taking. I've got a fallout shelter from a National Guard armory that I was given because they were no longer allowed to display them because it said civil defense shelter.
Oh,
And
well, I mean, you're talking, why is it that low contoured houses, low profiles became popular?
right. I'll tell you some of the stuff I told people this back in the day. Look, back when I was in the army in Europe, there was a nuke site I guarded, okay? And I was an extreme lefty back then. Not going to lie to you. I was 17 years old, a dumb kid, right? It wasn't until I got around 1920 that I started to understand things a little better. But I was going to the Greens and stuff over in Germany trying to see what the truth was about nuclear war because obviously the U.S. Army wasn't telling me the truth. And then I got a book by a guy by the name of Dr. Bruce Clayton. And I read
Yeah.
that. And that book confirmed the Army wasn't lying to me. The Greens were. And the one type of warfare that is completely survivable if you're prepared is nuclear warfare. And yet, that is completely not being discussed either at this point. And yet, the Russians have the largest civil defense besides the Swedes, or Swiss, have the largest civil defense network, and they've been enhancing it for all these years, plus hardening their stuff against EMP. And just like with that that ticking time bomb, as we're talking about it, of what we would call uh, ordnance contamination, the other one is EMP. And the Congress throws no
I
money at it when it would be very simple and cheap to harden our systems.
I disagree with you on the EMP situation.
Okay, that's fair. We're good. I'm not going to hate on you.
Um, I don't think that EMP is manageable. I don't think it's practical. Um, that's just my professional opinion, but I could be wrong.
Well, I totally agree that that's your opinion. I'm just saying it's for the amount of cost, it's
Hmm?
negligible. And they waste more money than that in Washington D.C. on cocaine. And I'm being very honest on that. And they can
Well,
find the
I,
funding
I'm
to
saying
at least placate it.
I don't think it's actually profitable. I don't think it's actually fomentable. I don't think it's actually useful. I think it's a complete waste.
Well, I mean, you can think about Faraday cages, and all the military vehicles are designed with that in mind. And that way their radios don't go down. They're on a 24-volt system instead of a 12-volt. I mean, there's a lot of
You
stuff.
know what? You know why the Faraday cages are implanted on aircraft is because of lightning strikes.
Yes, and that's the same thing for an EMP strike because remember, an EMP does not have to be. A lot of people think it has to be this, but it's not necessarily from a nuclear strike. It could be a Carrington event, which destroyed all of our cabling back in the 1800s because of a solar flare. And
Well,
so
yeah.
it is viable to harden it. It's no different than I think we made a real mistake when we left tubing and went to solid state. Because a tube, all you do is replace the tube. Something that's solid state, now you have to get into some more electronics. And that's just my opinion on my professional side of my opinion. And I am the foremost expert on only my opinion. I'm not the expert on your opinion or anybody else's. But that's my thought process, and I think that makes sense because the Russians still
Well,
use tubes when we don't.
well, I think, yeah, natural processes, sure, but designed, no.
Yeah, well, I get you, brother. We just agreed to disagree, and that's okay.
Absolutely.
I'm not even worried about it because that's not a hill I'll die on. But the hill I will die on is making sure everybody gets awake to the reality of ordinance and civil defense, and no matter what you want to take it to, um, that's a real thing. I do believe in shelter in place for most things, and your home is the best place. Just like the redesigned profile homes people were building inside. There's several examples where I live in Ohio where people build their houses on a hillside. And you know why that was done in case of, the 1950s stuff. And I bought a house that was built in the 1800s, and in the 1950s they decided to put a bomb shelter in the bottom of it. So I didn't even know it was there. I didn't go in the basement when I looked at my house, and it's kind of unique, that exists. But it was a different reality than we live in now. But it's also something that I do believe. Look, Bruce Clayton, I think, was on the mark on a lot of things. And that would be a good topic for us to discuss some future show. Dr. Bruce Clayton's book, Surviving Doomsday, I think it was called. I've got a copy of it both in hardcover and softcover. That'd be epic to talk about because you could blow holes in that one too, and that'd be fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
odds are I probably would.
Well, there you go, brother. And guess what? I wouldn't hate on you for it. So, as long as the information's getting out there and it's reasoned, I don't care. And I know you're a very reasoned man and a reasonable man. And I think,
Well,
honestly, this is going to be one of my highest rated, highest viewed shows, even on YouTube, because
okay.
this has been an epic conversation with an epic man that knows his shit and doesn't mind backing up and saying, "Look, Chuff, I disagree. It's okay to disagree with me. I can always
Well,
learn, and my ears are always open."
well, I hope that I'm not repugnant.
No, you're not. You're an epic dude. So, with that being said, I will close this show out with first show or first song on was by Axion Ghost, and that was my intro. And that show was called, or that song was called "It's Game Time," and the outro will be "Sojourn to Sikkim" by the same man, Axion Ghost. And I'm very happy that you guys got to talk or got to listen to me and Jim, who I find a very honest man who gives his opinion. And I'm glad you guys got to hear that little exchange we had. That was, I think it's going to go in a lot of directions because he is that epic. And you guys look forward to seeing when I say Jim is on.
Well,
Yep.
if I could have a request,
Yes, please.
raining blood.
Oh, I would love to, but there you
Bum, bum,
go.
bum, 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 bum.
Yep. I would
Go
love
ahead.
to do that, but I don't. They'll pull my channel on a strike by rights, so I can't do that. I can
Okay.
only use the music that I have the rights to, and that's because there you go. Whistle it up. There you go. It's a good.
Bum, bum, bum.
Well, yep. Awesome jam,
Hey,
brother.
go later.
All right. Stay on, just mute, and I will play Sojourn to Sikkim, my outro song by Axion Ghost. Links will be in the description. Um, anytime Jim wants to come on, he's more than welcome. He's an awesome man. With that being said, thank you for stopping by Kaiser's Castle. Drawbridge is being closed. And Shuff out.